This is Always Autos and Engineering. Welcome to OWIN CAR CARE Series. In this series, we'll be discussing how to know your car, things to consider when buying a car, how to help you pick a car that fits into your budget and lifestyle, how to keep your car running. Because it's not just about buying a car. The most important thing is to take care of the car and then make sure that the car is steadily running without giving you issues. And on this series, my co-host will be Mr. Edafe, the chief engineer at Owens Autos and Engineering. So he will be here with me on a weekly basis. We'll be delivering on different topics. So Mr. Edafe, welcome to.
Yeah, thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah. So today we'll be discussing servicing. When it comes to servicing a car, there's a lot of things involved. It's not just oil change, but today we'll be concentrating on oil change. Then, as we go on in the week, we'll be discussing other things that that are involved in when you talk about servicing. So we'll start with the oil change. So my first question for you today is: most Nigerians, when they buy a car, they think it just ends there. Just you spend money, you buy a car. Most people don't care to know how and what type of oil and how often they should change oil in their car. So my first question to you today is: how often should we change oil in a car? When is it due to for oil change in whatever type of car you're driving?
Yeah, oil car is best changed when you've driven for you've covered a reasonable distance, a reasonable mileage, and we cannot actually just come up and say it is based on mileage alone that we are meant to service our car. It all depends on your kind of use and far how much distance you cover per use that determines how often you're supposed to change the oil from your car. For instance, if you have to travel reasonable distance where the car will actually get up, the temperature will get up to its actual working temperature, it's advisable for you to service your car every 3,000 miles if your car is calibrated in miles. But if you're not able to drive on a reasonable distance, probably your workplace to your office is like 5 minutes drive, for example, it is advisable for you to change your oil after every 6 months. Now, um, changing of oil actually it's not just it's not a normal routine or a ritual that we carry on our cars because it is something we just want to do. I think we should first and foremost understand why do we have to do that. Apart from the oil serving as a lubricant to the engine, it also serves as a cleaning agent also to the engine. Now, there are some debris that would find their way within the engine. The oil does the cleaning of the engine, and that's why you have your filter in place in the car also. The filter traps those debris, those dirt that are within the engine that are flowing through the filter. It traps it and it allow the clean oil to pass through, and it gets to a point where the debris becomes too much that the oil cannot flow easily, and thereby starving the car from the engine rather from receiving oil at some particular point in the car. And that will also that if it is not properly taken care of on time will lead to um, engine knock, which might require a major replacement in the car, in the engine, or a overhaul or a complete replacement of the engine. And so it is something that we ought to take very serious. Your engine oil change is something you should take serious consideration about, to something you should look forward to always do. Thank you.
Okay, so from what I understand from what you just said, you said
Yeah.
changing of oil in cars is determined by how often you use the car.
Yeah,
So you're saying if you're the type that always embarks on long travels,
yeah,
it is
long journey
advisable to
to
change
service
your
your
oil
car
after every three
after
thousand
3,000 miles.
miles.
If your car is calibrated in miles,
Miles.
and if your car is being calibrated in kilometers, it is safe for you to do it every 5,000 kilometers. The reason being so is 1 mile is equal to 1.6 kilometers. 1 mile is equal to 1.6 kilometers. So if you do the math, it's within 3,000 miles is within 5,000 kilometers. So it is safe for you to walk within that range.
Okay, and then for those that don't always travel,
Yeah,
as
if you
who
don't,
just use their car for just school run, go
yeah,
to
school
work
runs
and
and yeah,
come
all
back,
that, yeah,
it's
it is
advisable to
advisable, yeah,
change after every
yeah,
six
every
months.
6 months. But now, if you follow your owner's manufacturer, it also depends on other two things. Now, from your owner manufacturers, they will tell you, the car manufacturers, they will tell you do this based on so mileage and so time, and also the oil manufacturer will also ask you to do this. Now, it now depends on the kind of oil you are using. But it is advisable for us within this part of the country, this part of the continent, to always try as much as possible to do it within this range 3,000 and 6 months time. Reason being that um, our oil within this area are not really monitored. In other developed countries, there are bodies that go around, check the quality of the oil, check the chemical properties of those oil to see if they actually meet up to the standard of the oil. For example, if you are using a synthetic oil, you should use your synthetic oil for at least 5,000 miles. And 5,000 miles is close to like approximately 8,000 kilometers if you are using a full synthetic oil. But how are we sure what we are buying is what we are seeing on the tag is what we have in the content? So for safety, it is advisable you use something that is within tolerance, something that can still work and not cause issues for you, because it's far cheaper getting an oil than buying an engine.
Okay, so you just said something about synthetic oil now.
Yeah.
So most Nigerians, we don't know which one is synthetic and non-synthetic oil. Most times sef is when we get to the mechanic shop, and that's when they start telling you this your engine, what it needs now is a synthetic oil. Is it a decision that your mechanic makes for you, or do these cars come with their own do manufacturers actually say this engine, the best oil for it is synthetic oil, or is it something your mechanic just look at your engine and then tell you this is the oil you should be using? Car owners should know what type of oil is best for their car, not just it's time for oil change, you drive to the mechanic and then the person is telling you use this and use. So how do we know which oil is best for our car?
Okay. Yeah, that was a nice question. The manufacturer, if I want to answer your question, the manufacturer of the vehicle tells you what oil to use. In most cases, for example, in most Toyota car, you will see 5W30, 5W, 0W20. In Mercedes Benz, most times you will see Mobi 1. In BMW, you will see used castor oil. Now, the manufacturers have been able to give you a typical example direction to the kind of oil you
Your
are
car.
meant to use. But your mechanic also has a role to play. Now, reason being that um, after you use your car for a while, because the oil is meant to serve as a layer between any rubbing parts within the engine. Now, for example, you have two metal that goes across each other. With time, it will generate heat because of the friction. Now, the oil serve as a middleman between those rubbing parts. After a period of time, after a period of use, the space between those rubbing parts becomes enlarged. Now, if you have a if your manufacturer has, for example, recommended a synthetic oil for, let's say for example, a 0W30, for, or let's start from 0W20. Now that oil, after probably you've used the car for a reasonable amount of years, after a while, that space between the rubbing part becomes enlarged. You need a thicker oil so that it will serve its purpose. That is why the blended um, oil, which is, for example, I have mentioned Mobi 2000, now comes into play. So it's a mixture of synthetic and also the normal conventional oil. So your mechanic can also advise you to use a oil that is a little bit thicker, and the manufacturer will also tell you what to use. But the mechanic advice will only come after a long period of use of the car, just to save the life of the engine.
Okay. So the summary of the whole thing is, even though most cars come with their recommended oil,
Yeah,
if you've used your car for a
for a
very
long
long
time.
time,
Yeah,
your mechanic can
yeah,
recommend
can recommend a thicker
thicker oil,
oil, a little bit thicker oil.
for your engine,
Yeah,
probably due to a little bit of expansion
of wear and tears.
in the engine.
Yeah.
Okay. So my next question is, when you were speaking, you talked about miles, how many miles you have to go before your
Yeah.
next oil change is due. The problem now is that most car users, they don't even know when they have exceeded the 3,000 miles or whatever. So how tell us how to know or where to check in our car when we've exceeded the 3,000 miles, when it's due for the next oil change. Because most people, I think they do this oil change out of guesswork. Most times they do it before it is even yet for the next oil change, or even when they even exceeded the 3,000 mile range. So please, how do we know when to where and how to check?
Okay, your vehicle has series of displays of the mileage of the car. Now, there is the actual mileage of the car from the date of manufacture, the date the car was manufactured. And that is the entire distance the car has traveled. And that is not supposed to be adjusted. It doesn't go down, it keeps increasing. It keeps increasing. Then you also have other mileage display that can be adjusted, that can be recalibrated to zero, so it will start counting all over again. Now for us as technicians, when we run a service in your car, what we do, we take it back to zero, so you start counting from zero to when it gets to 3,000, depending on your make. If it is if it's calibrated in miles, when you get to 3,000, so it prompts you to do your service. Or if it is calibrated in kilometers, when it gets to 5,000, it prompts you to do your service. And now, but based on our cars, we know we have different make in the market. Let's start from those Japanese cars, those Asian cars, which include Toyota, Lexus, Acura, Honda, Kia, and Hyundai, and the rest. Those ones, you see the actual odometer, which is the entire distance the car has traveled. Then you see something like service A and service B. We normally use the service A for those Asian cars. So we use service A. So when you do your service, we'll reset it to zero. So you start counting to the required mileage that we're going to be using for your service. Now, for those German cars, BMW, Mercedes Benz, Audi, and all that, you just have your actual odometer, and you also have another display that you also need to set to zero. You have to set it to zero to start counting again. But it is more easier to use a service tag. I am aware in some Toyotas, when you remove the battery from its terminal, and you connect back, it refreshes everything and resets to zero again. And so if peradventure you are already in 2,500 kilometers and you are not aware of the distance the car has traveled, now it means it has taken you to zero. You might not have an actual value to do your servicing again. So that's why the service tag is highly recommended. So when we do your servicing for you, we include a service tag indicating the current mileage the car has traveled and the next due mileage when the car will be due for service. So by doing so, it indicates and reminds you of your next service. Now you ask a question, how do we locate these things? It's on the dashboard. It's always on your dashboard. If you're not able to get to your service A and B, if you're using an Asia car, you can also use your service tag. You see the entire mileage of your car. Whenever you open your Mercedes Benz, for example, as long as you open the door, you just see the mileage, the entire mileage displayed. So you can just go through the service tag and ensure you've not exceeded your service requirement.
Okay, so in summary, he's just saying whenever you take your car for servicing and then they are done servicing, remind your mechanic. Like at Always Autos, what we do is we reset your car to zero for that service fee. We'll set it to zero so that when you get to that 3,000 mile range, your car starts indicating it's time for the next service. But even if maybe you're using an older model, I think most of these technology are built in these newer models from 2016 vehicles. But if you're using an old car, the odometer, the total mileage your car have traveled in the past is there on your dashboard, where you can just, like, let's assume your car is on 77,000 miles and then you do your oil change at that 77,000 miles. You already know that for the next oil change, when you watch your dashboard and it is on 73,000,
you said 77?
No, 70,000. If you're on 7,000 miles, you already know that if you look at your odometer and it's showing 73,000 or 70,000 past station, you already know that you're already due for service check. So what we do is we give you a tag indicating the current mileage in your car after the service was done, and put the next mileage where you should do your next service. So always have this in mind. This is the only way you can keep the difference between people that their car have served for 10 years and the ones that just buy a car this year and then everything just
is their consciousness with their servicing.
With your servicing,
their
being conscious of what happens in your car. And that is why we are here. As Always Autos, our job is not done when the deal is signed. It actually begins when you drive off. We are stay connected to you, remind you when your next oil change is due, and help our customers make sure their cars keep running and they keep enjoying every adventure. So stay with us. From next week, we'll get into another episode where we'll discuss other components of servicing, because it's not just about oil change. So thank you, Mr. Dabe, for today.